From the moment we enter the world, are we truly blank slates, shaped entirely by experience? Or do we arrive with an unseen framework that silently guides our thoughts, emotions, and perceptions? This question has fascinated thinkers for centuries, leading to deep debates in psychology and philosophy. While some argue that all knowledge and behavior stem from external influences, Carl Jung, the pioneering psychiatrist and founder of analytical psychology, proposed a strikingly different view, one that suggests human beings are born with deep-rooted psychological structures that shape our experience of the world before we are even aware of it. These structures, which Jung named archetypes, are like hidden blueprints embedded within the unconscious mind, influencing our instincts, fears, desires, and the way we construct meaning. They appear in myths, dreams, religious experiences, and even the everyday roles we take on in life, repeating in different forms across cultures and generations. Whether it's the hero's journey found in folklore or the universal image of a wise mentor, these patterns emerge in storytelling, art, and personal development, acting as silent forces that shape human nature. In this exploration, we will uncover what archetypes are, how they influence the way we think and behave, their deep connection to symbols, and Jung's insights into their relationship with religious and spiritual experiences. By understanding these hidden forces, we gain a clearer picture of the subconscious patterns that drive our decisions, relationships, and self-discovery. Carl Jung was more than a psychiatrist. He was a visionary who bridged the worlds of psychology, mythology, and spirituality. His exploration of ancient myths, folklore, and religious traditions led him to an extraordinary realization. Despite vast differences in culture, geography, and language, civilizations throughout history had strikingly similar themes, symbols, and narratives. Legends of divine creation, heroic struggles, transformation through suffering, and the battle between light and darkness appeared again and again in different societies, from Greek mythology to Hindu scriptures, from Native American folklore to medieval European legends. But what truly intrigued Jung was that the same themes emerged in the dreams and hallucinations of his psychiatric patients, people with no knowledge of these ancient stories. How is this possible? Jung proposed that these recurring images were not learned but inherited, existing in a deep, shared layer of the human mind. He called this the collective unconscious, a vast, hidden reservoir of shared psychological patterns that shape the way we think, feel, and perceive the world. Within this unconscious realm exist archetypes, the fundamental symbols and motifs that have guided human understanding for centuries. They are not just figures of imagination, but active forces shaping our instincts, behaviors, and the way we interpret life. The mother figure, the wise elder, the rebellious trickster. These universal patterns reflect something far deeper than culture or personal experience. They are embedded in our psyche, influencing our choices, relationships, and even our dreams in ways we often fail to recognize. To truly grasp the role of archetypes, we must first understand Jung's model of the psyche. He viewed the human mind as a vast system with three interconnected layers: consciousness, the personal unconscious, and the collective unconscious. Consciousness is the realm of direct awareness, our thoughts, emotions, and perceptions that we actively engage with. It is what we recognize as self. However, according to Jung, this is only the tip of the iceberg. Beneath it lies the personal unconscious, a deeper layer where forgotten memories, repressed emotions, and unresolved conflicts reside. This is the part of the mind shaped by individual experience, housing both the wounds of the past and the potential for personal transformation. Yet, even deeper still, beyond personal history and experience, is the collective unconscious, the domain of inherited psychological patterns that every human being shares. It is in this vast, unseen layer that archetypes reside, influencing everything from our deepest fears to our most profound spiritual awakenings. For example, the hero's journey, a universal narrative structure found in mythology, religious texts, and even modern films, mirrors a psychological process within us all. The call to adventure, the trials and tribulations, the moment of crisis, and the final transformation. These stages exist not only in stories, but in real life, shaping the way we grow, change, and evolve. Likewise, the shadow archetype, representing the repressed and hidden parts of ourselves, reveals itself in nightmares, conflicts, and projections onto others. Understanding these forces is not merely a philosophical pursuit, but a path to self-awareness, helping us recognize the hidden patterns that shape our relationships, fears, and personal growth. The unconscious consists of all mental processes that operate outside of our conscious awareness, influencing thoughts, emotions, and behaviors in ways we often do not recognize. Carl Jung divided the unconscious into two primary layers: the personal unconscious and the collective unconscious. The personal unconscious, as the term implies, is unique to each individual and is shaped by personal experiences, forgotten memories, and repressed emotions. This layer of the mind acts as a storage space for events that have been discarded by the conscious mind, either because they were deemed unimportant or because they were too painful to confront. However, Jung proposed that beyond this personal layer exists something much deeper and more universal: the collective unconscious. Unlike the personal unconscious, which is built through an individual's experiences, the collective unconscious is inherited and shared by all humans, serving as a foundation for how we perceive the world. It is within this deeper realm that we find archetypes, universal psychological patterns that shape thoughts, behaviors, and cultural narratives. These archetypes act as subconscious frameworks, influencing everything from our fears and aspirations to the way we construct myths, stories, and religious experiences. The unconscious does not merely exist as a passive storage space, but actively shapes how we experience life. Jung suggested that within every individual, regardless of background or upbringing, there are underlying forces that guide perceptions, emotions, and behaviors in remarkably similar ways. One of Jung's students, Erich Neumann, offered a compelling analogy to illustrate the role of archetypes. He compared them to physical organs. Just as human beings are born with a structured set of organs, such as the heart, lungs, and liver, that develop and function without conscious effort, so too does the psyche come pre-equipped with psychic structures that shape our mental and emotional lives. These psychological structures, or archetypes, act as the internal organs of the mind, influencing thoughts, emotions, and instincts long before we are even aware of them. Furthermore, just as the body depends on the proper functioning of its physical organs for health and survival, Jung argued that the well-being of the mind relies on the balanced functioning of archetypes. When these archetypal structures are ignored, suppressed, or distorted, whether through trauma, societal conditioning, or personal denial, mental and emotional distress can result. A failure to integrate certain archetypes can lead to imbalances in personality, much like a malfunctioning organ can affect the physical body. Neumann emphasized that a disrupted or wounded archetypal structure could cause psychological suffering, reinforcing Jung's belief that understanding and engaging with archetypes is essential for inner growth and personal development. A key distinction between physical organs and archetypes, however, lies in their visibility. While physical organs can be directly observed, measured, and studied, archetypes cannot be seen or touched. Instead, they reveal their presence through the patterns, symbols, and narratives that emerge in human consciousness. Throughout history, cultures across the world have manifested archetypes through myths, religious traditions, art, and dreams, expressing universal themes such as the hero's journey, the nurturing mother, or the wise old sage. These symbols act as clues, offering insight into the unseen forces of the psyche. Edward Edinger, in his work Ego and Archetype, explained that archetypal imagery can only be understood by distinguishing between signs and symbols. A sign is a direct representation of something known, such as a road sign indicating speed limits or a written word representing a specific object. A symbol, on the other hand, is a representation of something unknown, pointing toward deeper, often mysterious meanings. Symbols do not merely describe external realities. They convey living, subjective meaning, shaping the way individuals and societies understand themselves and the world. Through the study of symbols and their connection to archetypes, one can begin to uncover the hidden structures that govern the human mind, allowing for a deeper understanding of both personal and collective experience. While signs point to specific, known elements of the physical world. Symbols serve a deeper function. They point toward the unknown aspects of the psyche, hinting at subconscious patterns that operate beneath the surface of awareness. Carl Jung described symbolic content as existing in a realm of images that suggests something beyond comprehension, something ineffable. These images, metaphors, and narratives do not function randomly or without order. Rather, they consistently reflect fundamental principles rooted in the unconscious. Those symbols take different forms across cultures, eras, and individuals. They do not emerge in a chaotic or limitless fashion. Instead, they repeatedly align with key archetypal structures, forming a cohesive pattern of human experience. The archetypes do not dictate specific symbolic imagery, but rather provide the framework upon which these symbols are built. For instance, one culture may depict wisdom as an aged sage, while another envisions it as a divine oracle. Yet both reflect the same underlying archetype of the wise old man. This variance demonstrates that while the forms of symbolic expression differ, the core themes remain universal. As one reflects on these symbols and their manifestations in myths, dreams, and personal experiences, one can begin to uncover the hidden structures of the psyche. Erich Neumann, a leading disciple of Jung, explained that symbols serve as the language of the unconscious, conveying meaning in a way that logic and direct analysis cannot achieve. Unlike the conscious mind, which defines, categorizes, and explains through direct reasoning, the unconscious expresses itself through clusters of symbolic imagery. A symbol does not function as a single, isolated representation, but gathers meaning through layers of interconnected images, all orbiting around a central, ineffable truth. As Neumann described, the process of understanding the unconscious is like viewing a hidden reality through many different lenses. Each symbol reveals one aspect of the deeper truth, and only by examining a constellation of symbols together can one fully grasp their meaning. The unconscious does not communicate through direct statements, but through patterns of imagery that reveal themselves over time, much like a dream unfolding in layers of significance. It is through this symbolic engagement that one gains insight into the archetypal foundation of the mind. To illustrate how archetypes manifest in symbolic form, consider the most fundamental of all archetypes, the self. The self represents the integrative core of the psyche, uniting all other archetypal structures into a cohesive whole. Jung identified this archetype as the ultimate symbol of wholeness, inner balance, and psychological completeness. Because of its profound significance, the self has been depicted in countless symbolic forms throughout history, often appearing in religious, mythological, and spiritual imagery. One of the most common representations of the self is the mandala, a circular design often containing symmetrical patterns, a central focal point, and elements of quadrature, such as squares, crosses, or fourfold divisions. These images, appearing in traditions from Tibetan Buddhism to medieval alchemy, reflect the unconscious desire for order, balance, and unity. Other symbols associated with the self include the world navel, the cosmic axis, the philosopher's stone, and the elixir of life, all of which represent a central, unifying force that connects the individual with a greater whole. Edward Edinger, in his work Ego and Archetype, described how religious depictions of deities, divine figures, and spiritual symbols are often manifestations of the self-archetype. Whether in the form of gods, sacred centers, or myths of ultimate transformation, these images reflect the deepest layers of the psyche, striving towards self-realization and wholeness. Across traditions, the self appears as the central source of life energy, the essence of human potential, and the highest point of integration between conscious and unconscious forces. Many traditions have depicted this ultimate unity through symbols of divinity, enlightenment, or transcendence, emphasizing that the self is not merely a psychological concept, but a reflection of something greater, a fundamental force within human existence itself. While signs represent tangible and specific elements of the physical world, symbols transcend the visible, hinting at deeper aspects of the psyche. Unlike signs, which provide direct meaning, symbols serve as bridges to the unknown, guiding us towards subconscious forces that shape thoughts, behaviors, and emotions. Carl Jung emphasized that symbols do not emerge randomly or without structure. Instead, they align with fundamental psychological principles, forming patterns that have appeared consistently across cultures and eras. Though symbols take different forms, they are governed by archetypes, the universal blueprints of the mind. An archetype does not dictate a singular image, but rather establishes a psychological framework from which symbolic representations arise. For example, while one culture may portray wisdom as a sage, another may depict it as a sacred oracle, an enlightened monk, or even an ancient tree. These variations show that while the symbolic forms shift, the core themes remain universal. By studying how symbols manifest in myths, religious traditions, and personal dreams, one can begin to uncover the hidden structures of the psyche, revealing patterns that influence human experience at the deepest levels. The language of symbols, how the unconscious communicates. Jung's student, Erich Neumann, elaborated on how symbols serve as the language of the unconscious, conveying knowledge that rational thought alone cannot grasp. Unlike the conscious mind, which relies on structured reasoning and direct analysis, the unconscious communicates through imagery, metaphor, and patterns. A symbol does not function as a single, isolated entity. Rather, it gathers meaning through interwoven layers of representation, forming a rich tapestry of psychological insight. Neumann described this process as looking through multiple lenses. Each symbol reveals a different perspective of a deeper reality. Just as the meaning of a dream cannot be reduced to a single explanation, symbols must be interpreted in relation to one another to grasp their full significance. The unconscious does not communicate through words or logic. Instead, it speaks in the language of symbols, offering glimpses of hidden truths through dreams, myths, and creative expressions. To engage with these symbols is to embark on a journey of self-discovery, where each revealed image offers insight into the universal forces shaping our thoughts and behaviors. The archetype of the self, the path to wholeness. Among the many archetypes that reside in the unconscious, the most significant is the self, the unifying force that brings balance, integration, and completeness to the psyche. The self represents the totality of the mind, encompassing both conscious awareness and the hidden depths of the unconscious. Throughout history, this archetype has been expressed in countless symbolic forms, often appearing in spiritual and religious traditions. One of the most profound representations of the self is the mandala, a circular pattern with a defined center, often featuring symmetrical divisions such as crosses, squares, or quadrants. Found in Buddhist, Hindu, and indigenous traditions, mandalas symbolize inner harmony, balance, and the unity of opposites. They reflect the human psyche's innate drive toward wholeness, a process Jung referred to as individuation, the integration of all aspects of the self into a cohesive whole. Other symbols that represent the self include the world tree, the cosmic axis, the philosopher's stone, and the elixir of life, each pointing to a central source of wisdom, renewal, and transformation. The self in myth, religion, and spirituality. Edward Edinger, in Ego and Archetype, explored how religious imagery often reflects the self-archetype, with gods, divine figures, and sacred symbols serving as manifestations of humanity's deepest psychological structures. Across different traditions, the self appears as a guiding force, the source of life energy, and the ultimate potential within human consciousness. Whether in Christianity's concept of divine unity, Hinduism's Brahman, or alchemical traditions depicting the creation of the whole self, these images reflect a universal longing for self-realization and transcendence. Many religious traditions describe this process as enlightenment, transformation, or divine union, reinforcing the idea that the self is not merely a psychological construct, but a fundamental force of human existence. By recognizing and integrating the self, individuals move toward a state of inner balance, higher awareness, and personal fulfillment, achieving what Jung saw as the highest goal of psychological development, the realization of the true, complete self.